Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the Apex Gaming Modern Open. I'm Tandy, joined by Ross Merriam. So hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
We got 5 rounds down. We are entering into round 6 of 7 out of the Swiss, and we are getting to the nitty gritty. Gonna be locking up some top 8 slots this round.
This is the business end of the Swiss rounds. And top eight should. It's hard to say because we have a lot of players with unique records, a lot of unintentional drawing in the early rounds, and that makes drawing in later rounds a riskier proposition depending upon the tiebreakers. So, we're going to be watching a lot of X and 1 players. I know we have 2 players at 5-0. They are safe to draw this round. So that was our table one. It was Jacob Fumich on Scam and one of our Yogg players, Brendan Carpenter.
I believe so.
So those 2 players are in. We've locked those 2 spots, but we still have 6 left. And we've got a doozy of a matchup here to start with. We're going to be watching Zine Brunny. Watched him in round 1 playing Merfolk, going up against Brendan Lane on Esper Goryos. So, a tricky matchup because this Goryos deck, in addition to having the sort of combo aspect of it, where Merfolk tends to be pretty good, also has a ton of good disruption.
Namely, it has Solitude plus Ephemerate, which is traditionally very
Yes.
strong against creature-based strategies.
So this might be a tough one for Zine. Has a couple Force Invocations to try to stop early Goryos vengeances.
Now, to note, Goryo's Vengeance gets cast on the opponent's end step quite a lot.
Yes, so that's going to be an important trick for our Esper player. I'm also interested in how these copies of Tishana's Tidebinder can potentially swing this matchup. You can counter an Atraxa trigger.
Yeah, and then all you're getting hit is for 7 in the face.
But it does take away all of its abilities. It becomes just a regular 7/7. No
Doesn't even have
death touch, no
vigilance anymore.
lifelink, no vigilance, no flying. That's a lot easier for Merfolk to deal with.
Yeah.
If you counter a Gristlebrand activation, they might just be dead.
That's true. That's true.
Because
All right.
that's also going to lose lifelink. There's also 3 copies of Merfolk Trickster. That's a good one at stopping
Tap
Goryos.
it down. Yeah. Lose all abilities too, right?
Yep. So, there's some tricky things that this Merfolk deck can do to try to help itself along and win this matchup. So I'm interested to see these 2 decks score off.
Alrighty. Well, that is the match we're going to be watching. Brendan Lane on Esper Goryeo versus Zine Brunny on Merfolk. We watched Zine Brunny earlier in the event absolutely decimate Dawn Delosier in round number 1. Really strong archetype against mid-range interactive blue decks. Let's see how it fares against one of the format's top combo-oriented decks, Esper Goryeo. Set on down to the feature match area. All right, players are ready to go, so we'll be starting here shortly. We'll see who's on first. Zine Brunny on Merfolk going to be leading it off here with Basic Island and Ether Vial. A great start. Definitely where you want to be.
Still like those Portal Islands.
Oh, yeah. Those look nice. My first set of anything I ever bought was a Portal 2 starter. I think I got like 4 of them because they were just in Barnes & Noble on sale.
Ooh, those are prismatic ending in Brendan Lane's hands, so he can take out this Vial. Sometimes the Merfolk deck is inclined to keep very land-light hands because of the power of Ether Vial.
Definitely true, and sometimes it's Island Mutavault with the inability to cast Lords on turn 2 because they are relying on Ether Vial to do the heavy lifting. Prismatic Ending, an excellent answer to these powerful artifacts and enchantments that cost 1 and 2 over the last decade and change, but Prismatic Ending, just a clean answer.
Yeah. So I do see a Mutavault in Brunny's hand. I think he just picked up a second copy of Vial, though, so that might be the play here. Just reload.
Let's try again. Has Voldaren Hexcatcher, though, so may want to flash that in and counter something from Brendan Lane. Remember, these players do not know what each other are playing, so maybe trying to be a little tricksy here.
Still kind of like getting the Vial down, because each turn the Vial is in play is like an additional mana. So even though you're not using all your mana on turn 2, you're getting that mana back on future turns.
All right, Pluto Delta the land for Brendan Lane. Gonna main face fetch, maybe? Has Phlogy Archaeologist at the ready. Would be the drop here. Mill 3, look for a non-creature, non-land to put in hand.
Yeah, mill 3 cards, and it's a 1/4. That's what it does. No other text.
Oh, yeah. It's Augur of Brolus. Okay, this is a Godless Shrine, I'm guessing, because it's untapped and it's a fetched land. But never seen that art before. Phlogy Archaeologist comes down. See if Zine wants a counter of any kind. No. Finds Prismatic Ending number 2.
Lucky.
All right, and here's Voldaren Hexcaster. This recently printed Merfolk is a pseudo lord pumping all your other ones. It's a 1/1 base, so it's rather small, but it allows you to sacrifice any Merfolk creature to counter a non-creature spell unless they pay 1. So it kind of acts like Curse Catcher and kind of fills the role that Curse Catcher used to fill.
Yeah, very difficult to resolve Goryos Vengeance through that one, though it may cost Bernie a lot to stop it. This is interesting. Okay.
Okay, so just chump check, attack for 1, see if you block. Brennan Lane passes the test and blocks. Here's a Faithful Mending.
I've got to assume that this is a Tishana's Tidebinder for Zine. Can't imagine that he just had nothing proactive to do with his mana.
Now the question is, do you just cast the Tishana's Tidebinder to get some pressure down, even if you don't have a target for the counter ability? Especially if Brandon Lane goes Swamp Thoughtseize, which I think he has lined up.
I am inclined to say yes. Pressure is very important, both for the Merfolk deck in general and competing against the Goryos deck.
All right, discards a Faithful Mending and a Thoughtseize, so no big baddie in the graveyard. Shazim Brunny says, you know what? We're just going to keep on keeping on. I don't think that the vial is there, but maybe it is. And if it is, that's a sash.
I think I saw it again.
Okay, you're right. It is there. It's a different artwork than the other one.
Yeah. So the 4th land though means Brunny can play the vial and still hold up Tidebinder. The problem here is he just has no pressure.
So he's got a Voldaren Hexcatcher in play. It's right there. Flaggy Archaeologist, a great card because it comes down and gets a card and plays defense well. Is a nice hit to mill over some of your bigger creatures. And it's a great target for Ephemerate, too, in very grindy games.
Yeah, it's there if you need it. It's nice to have an incidental creature that often sticks around, that just in case you need to Ephemerate something else. And I do see, I think, 2 Ephemerates in Brendan Lane's hand. So we might see the Archaeologist flip back and forth from the battlefield. Got a couple extra triggers. Dig for a Goryos Vengeance.
Finds Manamo, School of Water's Edge. That one can untap Legends. We see it occasionally these days with the One Ring, as untapping that thing is quite powerful. Yeah. All right, Mutavault coming in for 3. It is being buffed by the Curse Catcher, or the Vidalian. I said it 6 times already. Vidalian Hexcatcher, excuse me. Here's a Solitude.
Ooh, and has the Ephemerate to blink it on the Evoke. Now, you're going to want to hit the Hexcatcher first. That way, nothing gets sacrificed to counter the Ephemerate, because even if the only creature you're targeting gets countered, you still want the Ephemerate to resolve so it rebounds, so you can target the Archaeologist, if nothing else. So let's hit the...
We're going to counter the ability. Then Ephemerate is going to blink it, and so it is going to come down. All right.
So now there's no incentive for Brunny to sack anything to the Hexcatcher in order to try to counter Ephemerate. And yes, should respond to the Tidebinder itself. Just in case Brunny wants to sack the Tidebinder to Hexcatcher.
Okay. So Ephemerate resolves, Blink Solitude. It's going to stick around, eats the Hexcatcher. Brunny going to gain 1. And Flaggy Archaeologist blocks the Mutavault. So, going to go back Brennan Lane's way. Successfully defended against this early pressure. We have a Tainted Indulgence. Going to draw 2, discard 1. Looking to find one of those big baddies for Goryos Vengeance. Finds Gristlebrand. This
now
one might be done.
Rebound to the Ephemerate to get this Tidebinder off the battlefield.
No, we're putting the trigger on the stack. Haven't chosen a target yet. We're going to bring back the Grizzlebrand. And then that one's going to catch the Ephemerate, so it sticks around quite a while.
Yeah, and this game is over.
Yeah, even if it's not actually over, it's basically over.
Brendan Lane's deck operating on all cylinders there, while Zine had a pretty clunky start with that turn 1 Vial getting removed by Prismatic Ending. Lane answering all the key threats from Zine, and then doing his thing with Goryos Vengeance Ephemerate. This is how the Esper Goryos deck wants to play every single game.
All right, Brunny. Going to take 3 from the hit of Solitude, and Brennan Lane going to gain some life. And now, I can't imagine Brendan Lane's going to lose this one, but we'll see if Zine's got some tricks up his sleeve. Zine was part of the trio that won yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He was. But unfortunately, Merfolk don't usually have sleeves because they're underwater. Not big on shirts, so the Merfolk.
Here comes an Otawara and another Ephemerate. Seals the deal. And Brendan Lane takes game number 1. As these players are shuffling up here for game number 2, they're going to be taking a look at their sideboard to see how they can help out in the matchup. For Ross, why don't you take a look at Zine Brunny's Merfolk list and tell me what he's got against this Esper Goryos deck.
Okay, well, I do see 3 copies of Curse Totem, 2 Force of Negation, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Hibernation, 2 Spreading Seas, 2 Stern Scolding, 1 Subtlety, and 2 copies of Surgical Extraction. The Surgicals and the Cage, excellent. Just stopping Goryos Vengeance cold, so those 3 absolutely coming in. I also like the Force of Negations. There's a lot of key spells that you can fight over with that. And I like the Subtlety, in particular for fighting Grief and Solitude. So more free counter spells and Graveyard Hate coming in for the Merfolk side.
All right, on the other side of the table, we have Esper Goryos up a game, but how's Brendan Lane going to approach this Merfolk matchup on the draw, do you think?
His sideboard has 2 copies of Celestial Purge, 2 Dothy Voidwalker, 1 Force of Negation, 1 Prismatic Ending, 1 Solitude, 2 Subtlety, 2 Supreme Verdict, 2 Surgical Extraction, and 2 Teferi Time Raveler. Here, I like the removal. The 4th Prismatic Ending, the 4th Solitude are excellent. The 2 copies of Supreme Verdict. I'm semi-interested in these subtleties as well to combat opposing subtleties.
Yeah.
So I think those could be useful too.
Force action.
But that's more of a maybe.
Yeah.
But definitely bringing in the 2 more spot removal spells and the 2 sweepers.
Okay, well, as these players are shuffling up and finishing their sideboarding, we are going to take a moment and say thank you to our sponsors here. At Apex Gaming, we are working with a host of companies to promote their businesses as well as use their products in store. And if you want to put your name on this broadcast, just reach out to Apex Gaming MTG on Twitter, and maybe you can put your name in front of couple thousand people each weekend we do these events. First up, thank you so much to Ultimate Guard. They are the industry leader when it comes to TCG supplies, from the katana sleeves that are excellent to the Sidewinder deck box as well as Archive giant deck box holder. They have the best in the business when it comes to those types of things to protect your TCGs. Thank you to Ghost Energy. Ghost is one of my favorite teams from back in the day when I used to play PUBG and watch their esports team, and they make some darn fine energy drinks to keep us rooting and tooting all through the Thunder Junction pre-release today.
Hopefully not too much tooting. This is an enclosed space.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you to Wings, etc. Grill and Pub. Fine place to get some food and drink. I know Ross and I will be heading up there after the top 8 is done, and we're going to be spending some time with some friends around here. You can do the same thing. Just go to your local Wings, etc. Grill and Pub. Last but not least, thank you so much to SpiceRack.gg. SpiceRack is a brand new tournament software program that is... I don't know what's happening.
Running our event.
Oh, old-fashioned match slips, Ross. We had a little bit of an issue earlier, but we're gonna be doing something like that. It's funny.
We're working through it.
We are fighting through it. But thank you to SpiceRack for providing us some tournament software. It's got some work to do, but it's very promising. And the people behind the scenes are working quite hard to make this the best event possible, and we will be glad to be working with them in the future, and help them work out all the bugs.
Okay, let's look at some opening hands here for game 2, and I see a Solitude in Brendan Lane's hand. That's usually a good sign against the creature deck. I just see some lands so far in Zine's hand. Well, I guess the rest of the cards were not good enough. Lane taking a mulligan here.
Yeah. Brony keeping that 7 on the play. Gotta imagine he's the favorite in this game after that, but anything can happen, and we know that Brendan Lane's Esper Goryos that can be explosive, but also really tricky.
Yeah, and that explosion can undo a lot of mulligans. Just a quick Goryos Vengeance will it'll undo about 7 mulligans. This is more than most people take in a game.
I do see that subtlety, so it looks like Brendan Lane agreed with you and brought it in. We'll see how effective it is against Merfolk. Sometimes it's rather weak in the face of Aether Vial, but they don't always have Aether Vial. right, no play for Bruni on 1. Gonna go back Brennan Lane's way.
Speaking of not having Ether Vial.
Oh, no second land either.
7-card keep, 1 land, no vial?
All force negations, I bet.
Yeah, but
Oops, all force negations. I don't know, man.
This is the issue. You can have as much disruption as you want, and if you're not pressuring them, the combo deck will eventually grind through it all.
All right, Undercity Sewers the find off of Polluted Delta. We're going to get a Surveil. Brennan looking to find something like a Traxor or Gristlebrand to put into the graveyard right here. Bruni might also have Surgical Extraction in hand, you know. There's free and cheap interaction,
Yeah.
and it's possible that keeping 7 with just like one cool piece of interaction might just win you the game.
Could just die to Solitude beatdowns.
Yeah, but that takes a long time, and you can draw some lands before that. All right, Grief Scam time. Looks like Stern Scolding. That's going to straight up counter Grief. A nice little juke there from Zine Bruni out of the board, and that's going to take care of the Grief.
Yeah, that's a 2 of I overlooked. Very good at combating both evoke creatures in the Esper deck.
Yeah, the only one it didn't hit, as far as I can remember, is Subtlety, but it's quite good against Solitude and Grief. Yeah. Second land found for Bruni. Doesn't have a play on his own turn, but does have one on the end step. Here's the Curse Catcher, Hex Catcher.
Hex Catcher.
Vidalia Hex Catcher?
Vodalian Hex Catcher.
Vidalcan Hex Catcher?
Please stop.
It's just a 1/1. Not that scary, but now it's a 2/2 with Island Walk.
Master of Pearl Trident coming down for Zine Bruni.
Okay. Got some pressure going. Gonna fetch. Flooded Strand looking for a way to put something into the graveyard, maybe. A Solitude, maybe. Here is the Black-White Surveil land. Let's get the name of that one.
That is
It's the first time I've seen it today.
Shadowy Backstreet.
Okay, keeps on top. Has to like it. Land number 4. Gonna shock with a Watery Grave. Is there a verdict or something? Ah, hard cast Subtlety, maybe? Here come the Knuckleheads. Subtlety come in. Is this going to ambush? Should we have played Lord of Atlantis? Are we going to lose because we didn't play Lord of Atlantis?
I don't think so. Looks like a Subtlety from Zine is being evoked here.
Fair enough. And Svulin gone. Svulin.
And then re-evoke Subtlety on your Subtlety. Yeah, that is... Okay, there we go. Layout. Let's...
Make it a Subtlety sandwich. Alright, so Subtlety resolves. That one's going to go on the bottom. And this Subtlety.
And Zine getting punished for not playing the Lord of Atlantis pre-combat.
Well, it would have got hit with Subtlety. Oh, another Subtlety? Wow. Just a pitch fest here.
Has Grafdigger's Cage, Lord of Atlantis, and another blue card, so deciding which of the blue cards to pitch, and goes with Lord of Atlantis.
I think he actually might have another Hex Catcher here, too, but wasn't really wanting to do it. Yeah, so wasn't getting blown out quite as bad as we thought, but here is a lot of damage, and Brennan Lane is in some trouble, and Zine Bruni with just Grafdigger's Cage in hand, but that's not where it needs to be. It needs to be on the battlefield, but Brennan Lane doesn't have it. Quick, game number 2.
Zine able to find the second land in time, and has the pressure he needed. You know, Brennan Lane's draw really didn't come together there. Never threatened any sort of Goryos nonsense.
Yep.
And then lost the key battle of subtleties. That was all she wrote.
I mean, you called it, man. The subtlety battle was hard fought and won by the Merfolk player, the one that has more copies of subtlety.
Well, also the one that wasn't making land drops, so had more cards in his hand.
True. All right, we are in round number 6 of 7. We are currently watching Brennan Lane on Esper Goryos versus Zine Bruni on Merfolk, and we are moving to game number 3. Zine Bruni was on the winning team yesterday in our team open, and he was in the which spot? Not the modern spot.
He was playing Blue-White Control in Standard.
All right, but picking up Merfolk for today's event.
About as different of 2 decks as you can get.
Yeah. Fish are usually the ones beating up on the control deck, so you usually don't see the control players jumping on the creature, the Ether Vial bandwagon.
Zine's been beating up on everyone regardless of which side he's on.
That's true.
You know, winning the tournament yesterday and now in contention for top 8 today deep into the tournament.
Yep.
Players,
Go ahead.
players almost done shuffling here, and then we will get this final game of the first feature match of round 6. Looks like both our backup feature matches are also still going. You can see Alex Treadway and Cameron Lance in the foreground there. Treadway, of course, playing that innovative Tron deck. Leyline and Scion and Sanctum of Ugin. Oof. Oh my.
Yeah, the Sanctum of Ugin Scion Leyline combo has looked real juicy and has made for some really fun mulligan combinations. We're about ready here for game number three for our primary feature. Let's see if either of these players are going to mulligan or if we're going to start. The winner of this match very likely to make it to top 8. We have one round left after this, but once you reach a certain threshold, intentional draws at the end of the day often come up. Island for Bruni. Tide Shaper, 1 drop, just to get some pressure down. Back Brennan Lane's way. Watergrave comes in as a shock. See if we maybe play a 2-drop, and we do. Philology Archaeologist.
That's a solid one when your opponent starts off with the Tide Shaper, which when they do that on turn 1 and don't wait for the kicker, it suggests I have a bunch of lords and I want to get aggressive and get bodies on the battlefield as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So Lane needs to play some defense.
No subtlety, and we find Goryos Vengeance.
Didn't mill a creature, so no big target for that just yet.
Yeah, and without something like Faithless Looting, a 1-cost looter effect in the format, it's pretty difficult to put a creature into the graveyard and Goryos Vengeance into play with just 3 mana.
Lane would have to fetch for a Surveil land and hit the creature on the top.
Yeah.
Looks like a Verdict was the draw for Lane this turn. That is also excellent against what I would expect will be a creature-heavy draw from Zine Bruni.
Yeah, and Force Negation does not stop Supreme Verdict. Supreme Verdict is called Supreme Verdict for a reason. It's so hard to remove it from the stack once it's there. 2 lords come in. We're going to block one with Philology.
Is there a Vidalian Hexcatcher? Interesting that Lane is doing this now. I think you would wait for Bruni to tap out. Don't give him the information in case you mill over a target for Goryos Vengeance with the Surveil trigger.
Curious exactly why that was done that way.
And a cage post-combat resolved, so now the Goryos Vengeance, not a real problem. Lane milled over a prismatic ending too, so might have wanted to keep that on top if he had known the cage was coming out, getting very punished for being a little antsy.
Right.
With
I was trying to figure out why he might have done the sequencing the way he did in the moment he did. Couldn't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Here's a Supreme Verdict. It's going to take out these 2 creatures. If you're Bruni, you're not that unhappy about this. I mean, you weren't attacking for that much, and this Verdict is like the ace in the hole for Brendan Lane.
Yeah, losing 2 creatures is pretty acceptable here. I think Lane has a Solitude. I think he's trying to set up a situation where he Verdicts this turn, Bruni untaps, plays a creature, Lane can play land 5 and Solitude that creature, and now he's in the driver's seat with a 3/2 lifelinker.
No 3rd land for Zine Bruni.
I see a prismatic ending off the top, so Lane can deal with that Grafdigger's Cage whenever he wants to. May want to hold on to that so Bruni doesn't know and thinks he's safe when he isn't.
Bruni doesn't know.
Much like Scotty.
Here's a Stern Scolding for the Grief, a nice counter for that Elemental. And we're going to go back Bruni's way. Land number 3 is Waterlogged Grove. We can play Svulin. We have a Force Negation at the ready, but we also have Tishana's Tidebinder. Bruni here doesn't bite off the Tidebinder on that land. I wouldn't mind seeing that. We're getting dangerously close to hard cast Atraxa territory, and I assume we have 1 green source in the deck that can do that.
Usually there is. Yeah, there's a Hedge Maze.
Yep. Meticulous Archive is the find. We're going to bench another Prismatic Ending because, like you said, we did find that one earlier.
But that potentially leaks the information to Zine that Lane has another answer to Cage in hand. Because you know he has the Goryos Vengeance off the early Archaeologist.
Well, he also just doesn't have a big creature in the graveyard, so...
But eventually you'd like to think Lane wants to put one onto the battlefield. So would be unwilling to mill over one of his prismatic endings.
Here's a grief.
Could see Tidebinder on that grief. And we'll have 2 vanilla 3/2s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get Tashana's Tidebinder on the screen because this is a relatively new card. This made a significant impact in Modern. Not only is it a Merfolk, which fits right into this deck, but it's a 3/2 with Flash, and it when it enters the battlefield, you may counter target activated or triggered ability, and when you do, if that is a creature or an artifact, it loses all of its other abilities. Or sorry, creature or planeswalker, it loses all its abilities. So really sweet card here. But it is going to counter the Grief trigger, and then Prismatic Ending is going to remove Grafdigger's Cage. So if we can put a big creature in the yard, Goryos Vengeance is online.
With the milled over Prismatic Ending lane surmising, might as well use my mana now. Zine knows that I have an answer to this.
Zine needs to commit to the board, but in doing so may open himself up to getting hammered.
Lane isn't playing Hammer.
That's
playing
true.
Goryos.
It's true. Here's Felune. Going to go back Brennan Lane's way. Doesn't want to trade the Tidebinder for the Grief. Knows that we can grow the Tidebinder. We can give it evasion with Island Walk soon. Here is Solitude, and I think Brunny's got a Subtlety at the ready. Let's see if he wants to pitch for it. Oh, I see a Surgical Extraction over there, too.
That is a nice one. It looks like Lane may need to do the heavy lifting with these elementals in this game. That's going to be hard to do. This Violin is the biggest creature on the battlefield.
Oh, yeah. And it just draws a card every time you attack. It's wild. Card's so cool.
But Zine going to need to find another Merfolk to give it indestructible to avoid a double block trade.
Looks like his blue card in hand is Force of Negation. His other card's Surgical Extraction. I'm curious if he has a other blue card that I don't know about. Pro tip for those at home, don't show the subtlety until you know what you're pitching. Say, thinking. So at this point, there's leaks that Zine has multiple blue cards in hand.
Whereas before, it may just be you thinking about whether or not you want to cast the subtlety.
Right. All right. We get to swing in with the Swollen, and it's a 3/4, so it gets around the Grief's 3 power. And we do get to draw a card. Finds a land. Not the best draw, but we can hit land drops and activate the Waterlogged Grove if we need to draw a card.
And Lane all the way down to 6. This is a tricky spot for him to navigate, especially because he doesn't know about Surgical Extraction. So if in a couple turns he does try to set up a Goryos Vengeance, it'll just get blown out for 0 mana.
All right, so Bruni here has a Surgical Extraction, and he's thinking about main phasing it to shuffle the Solitude away. He knows that Lane has at least 1 Goryos in hand, but doesn't really have much information about the rest. A Solitude plus Ephemerate turn over the next few would be extremely bad for him. And since there's no big target for the Surgical Extraction in the graveyard right now, this is basically just, I'm going to remove like all your Supreme Verdicts, and then I'm going to make sure that Solitude gets put somewhere deep down.
Okay, I like it. And Lane reveals a pretty weak hand of double Goryos Vengeance, Ephemerate.
Yeah, I mean, Ephemerate with Grief is still not bad, though, because it does reset from the Tidebinder, so we do have a good play next turn, perhaps. It's not the best. I mean, Swoolin's still drawing cards. The best would probably be something like Tainted Indulgence or Faithless Mending.
Yeah, Mending or Indulgence into a big creature, then Ephemerate on the Grief in order to clear the way, and then you end step the Goryos Vengeance so that with a rebound Ephemerate can keep your legendary creature on the battlefield. That's the ideal.
Brendan gonna sack that Waterlogged Grove, draws a Lord of Atlantis, has a Hex Catcher. Unclear on the last card. Maybe a Force of Negation.
I think it's Force of Negation. That's a great one too. So if Lane
and
goes,
he took the Verdicts too. So
yeah. So if Lane goes for anything on his own turn, you can pitch cast the Force. If he lets Zine on tap, we got 3 lands to hardcast it.
All right, Lane back against the wall finds Pluto Delta. We're gonna go looking for a surveil land, and if we get super lucky, we can put one into the graveyard right now. And then we have double Goryos Vengeance, which does get around that Force of Negation if that is Bruni's lost card. So a really big surveil here. If we hit one of them big creatures, all bets are off.
Ding. Fries are done.
Huh! Oh! GG. Zine Bruni and Merfolk take it down and likely punching his ticket into a back-to-back top 8 weekend here at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio.
Doing it with Azorius Control and Merfolk. Really impressive.
Yeah, displaying range.